Keyera, AltaGas, and Canadian National Railway are collaborating on a $240 million rail terminal that will transport approximately 45,000 barrels per day of propane and butane from Fort Saskatchewan to West Coast export facilities.
Canada is making a bold move that could open a powerful new path to global energy markets. A major project is already taking shape, helping Alberta send more energy to the world while creating jobs, boosting trade, and strengthening Canada's economy. This project could change Canada's future. 3 of Canada's most significant energy and transportation companies announced a partnership that will reshape how Alberta's liquefied petroleum gas reaches global markets. Keyera Corp, AltaGas Limited, and CN Rail announced plans to advance the Alberta Corridor Export Rail Terminal, known as the ACE Rail Terminal, a strategic Canadian energy infrastructure investment designed to move approximately 45,000 barrels per day of propane and butane from Fort Saskatchewan, Alberta, directly to West Coast export facilities. Construction activities have already begun. The expected in-service date is mid-2028. The ACE Rail Terminal will be built on Keyera-owned lands within Alberta's industrial heartland near Fort Saskatchewan. Keyera will own and construct the terminal. CN will provide the rail transportation network linking the Fort Saskatchewan region to the West Coast. AltaGas will utilize its West Coast export platform to move the propane and butane to overseas buyers, primarily in Asia. The 3 companies announced the project simultaneously through a joint press release distributed on May 20th, with the combined announcement reflecting the integrated nature of what each company brings to the supply chain. The capital commitment attached to the project is documented and specific. The project represents an initial investment by Keyera of approximately 240 million Canadian, including approximately $100 million incremental to Keyera's previously disclosed 2026 growth capital guidance. That incremental amount, money beyond what Keyera had already committed to spending in its public guidance, signals the degree to which the partnership's economics justified, accelerating the investment timeline. The ACE Terminal's design addresses a specific operational gap in how Alberta LPG currently moves to Tidewater. The facility will utilize a unit train capable rail loop design. That design means an entire train loaded with propane and butane can be loaded at the terminal without uncoupling individual cars or repositioning locomotives in the conventional back and forth manner that traditional rail terminals require. Unit train loading dramatically improves throughput efficiency, reduces the time a train sits at the loading facility, and lowers the per-unit transportation cost compared to traditional rail solutions. It is the same operational model that has made grain and potash export terminals in Saskatchewan among the most cost-competitive bulk commodity systems in North America. This project reflects our continued focus on strengthening and extending Keyera's integrated value chain while providing customers with an efficient solution to diversify market access and benefit from growing global LPG. Demand, said Dean Setoguchi, President and Chief Executive Officer of Keyera. The ACE Terminal is timed to enter service alongside Keyera's KFS Fractionation 3 project, which is also expected to be completed in mid-2028. KFS Fractionation 3 is an expansion of Keyera's Key Access Gateway system, an integrated infrastructure complex in the Fort Saskatchewan region that processes raw natural gas liquids into purity products including propane, butane, and condensate. Aligning the ACE Terminal's in-service date with the KFS3 expansion is a deliberate commercial sequencing decision. The additional fractionation capacity at KFS3 will produce additional volumes of propane and butane that the ACE Terminal will then move by rail to the coast for export. The 2 projects are commercially interdependent. The West Coast destination for ACE-loaded trains is the Port of Prince Rupert, Canada's Deepwater Pacific Gateway, which CN Rail has specifically identified as a key export point for energy products as projects in the region approach completion. Prince Rupert is North America's deepest natural harbor, offering direct ship-to-rail container and bulk handling, and sits on the shortest trans-Pacific shipping route from North America to Asian markets. CN's president and CEO Tracy Robinson was explicit about this connection in the joint announcement. The ACE Rail Terminal is strategic, trade-enabling infrastructure that will add efficient and scalable capacity between the Alberta industrial heartland and West Coast gateways, particularly the Port of Prince Rupert, as key energy export projects approach completion, Robinson said. The Asian LPG market dimension of the ACE terminal's commercial rationale is central to why AltaGas is the export platform partner in the arrangement. AltaGas operates the Ridley Island propane export terminal at the Port of Prince Rupert, one of North America's largest LPG export facilities, and the Ripet terminal on Ridley Island at the same location. Together, these terminals give AltaGas the capacity to receive rail-loaded propane and butane at Prince Rupert and load it directly onto very large gas carriers for delivery to buyers in Japan, South Korea, China, and Southeast Asia. LPG demand in Asia is driven by residential cooking and heating, petrochemical feedstocks for plastics and chemical manufacturing, and the ongoing transition from coal to cleaner burning fuels in countries like India that are expanding their LPG distribution networks rapidly. The 45,000 barrels per day of transportation capacity the ACE terminal provides upon startup is the facility's opening capacity. The infrastructure is described in the announcement as highly scalable and able to support the transportation of additional energy products from the region as market opportunities evolve. That scalability clause is meaningful for two reasons. First, it signals that the unit train rail loop and associated infrastructure are designed with excess capacity that can be activated without rebuilding the terminal's core infrastructure. Second, it keeps open the possibility of expanding the product mix beyond propane and butane to include other hydrocarbons produced in Alberta's industrial heartland condensate, specialty chemicals, or other natural gas liquid fractions if market conditions develop in ways that make additional products commercially viable to export through the West Coast. The timing of the ACE terminal announcement fits within a broader pattern of Canadian energy infrastructure commitments announced in a compressed window in May 2026. The Carney-Smith implementation agreement, targeting a 1 million barrel per day West Coast oil pipeline, was signed May 15th. LNG Canada reported a monthly record of 1 million metric tons of natural gas exported to Asia in April 2026. The Enbridge Sunrise Pipeline expansion is adding 300 million cubic feet of natural gas per day to Pacific LNG feedstock capacity. The ACE terminal adds 45,000 barrels per day of LPG export capacity to the same Pacific corridor. These are separate projects announced by separate companies, but they are all components of the same structural shift in how Alberta's hydrocarbon production reaches global buyers. Alberta's industrial heartland near Fort Saskatchewan is already one of the most concentrated hydrocarbon processing regions in North America, hosting refineries, petrochemical plants, fractionation facilities, and pipeline infrastructure, serving hundreds of thousands of barrels per day of production. The ACE terminal adds rail export capacity to a region that previously had limited direct connection to West Coast marine export terminals for LPG volumes at unit train scale.